You know, seeing how the whole Mega Man or Rockman franchise ends up getting fewer game releases over the past couple of years, it kinda looks like the whole franchise is on its declining state. Especially when a different game is considered as the spiritual successor of Mega Man by many, even though the spiritual successor ends up getting a poor rating. It goes to show Capcom's lack of interest on the development of the franchise as a whole. Sure, they did manage to develop Mega Man 11 and a few Mega Man collection that's available through consoles and on Steam, which that collection is kinda just porting the game. But that's just about it. They don't plan on developing new different Mega Man game within the franchise. It kinda seems that the other parts of the franchise ends up getting neglected badly. Luckily, Capcom Taiwan develops a new mobile game within the franchise, one that is accessible through mobile devices for free, at the same time manages to retain some form of degree on its gameplay, as well as those microtransactions that you usually get for playing a mobile game that's for free. Hey, I don't hate them for that. The game is for free after all. Though yeah, it has some setbacks because of it. This is K1PM and today I'll be reviewing the mobile game Rockman X DiVE. Rockman X DiVE was just launched on March 24 of 2020. It's already been months since its first release of the game. I believe it's already fair to give a full-on review about it. For a Mega Man franchise that's released on a mobile platform, it's rather unappealing at first considering it came from a series of consoles and how mobile games tend to be too greedy towards the players. Having too much microtransactions involved, and at most with little value, just might cut off some players off from the game. It's not the first mobile game they have, but I'm certain it's not the same as the other mediocre Mega Man mobile game they have. Now, I'm no stranger when it comes to the series. I myself am a big fan of the Mega Man franchise, especially Mega Man X series. I still even have my Rockman X7 when I lived at Japan for a bit years ago, when I was a kid back then. It's not on its pristine condition, but hey, it still looks good though. Though I wish I still had the other Mega Man discs that I own. I kinda end up losing them since I was a kid back then. And you know how it usually goes. But anyway, for me at first seeing a Mega Man game at the Google Play Store, it gave me hope at the same time worries me with all the whole possible transactions involved that might end up in a pay-to-win kind of thing. Despite of it, my experience with the game became a good one though, to say the least. I'll be talking about more on my experience playing the game later on the video. The first thing I need to talk about is rather important. Rockman X DiVE is no exception from the microtransactions, considering it has a gacha roll system. When I say gacha system, I mean it's a game of chance where the player heavily relies on to make any further progress on the game, or makes the game much more easier to play on. In Rockman X DiVE's case, it'll give you better characters or weapons based on chances. You could possibly get some good ones and some bad ones, but when you roll, you usually get more bad ones though, since the higher the quality or rank that character or weapon is, the lower its chances that you could get. It's kinda like those loot bosses in some other games, but not much purely on the cosmetics or vanity part of it. It's kind of a common thing nowadays for a game that's free that doesn't rely on ads. I mean, they gotta make money somehow out of it, which is understandable, though the cost of it is rather questionable, considering the ones you'll be getting is still based on chances. Although there are some events that would guarantee you a S-rank weapon or characters, but you gotta have to pay for it though. Though things could change depending on how the developers do. This of course is a huge letdown for those who are not used to these kind of luck-based game. Although even if you didn't get lucky on having a single rank S or character, There's always an option of doing researches in game out from the materials you gain from several other sources, but it really takes really long. It's still a plus though for a game that has a gacha system.
Ready!
Even if it has a gacha roll system, the game seemed pretty generous compared towards the other gacha games out there I've experienced playing. But then again, the chances is still really low on a normal roll. It's best if you'd be waiting for a huge rate-up event instead. Kinda like what I did during the DiVE festival. My entire 28 days of grinding from the start of the game earned me 14,750 elemental medals. That's the currency used for doing a roll, while a 10 times roll is worth 1,000 elemental medals, which you'll have a hard time earning it through daily quests, monthly activity, progression from the story, versus mode, clearing rewards, challenges, events, etc. It kinda sounds a lot, but you could actually play at your own pace. The game isn't rushing you to play the whole thing. On the main platforming side, it's the same how Mega Man series does. It feels very nostalgic on how they managed to recreate each stages from the previous Mega Man franchise into 3D versions out of it. I feel amazed on how the stages look with great detail, along with the respective background music. Although those Dr. Light capsules isn't there, since those armor parts that you normally could get is rather a set already for a different X character you could get through gacha rolls. The disappointing part is that the stages are rather too short compared to its predecessors. You could easily clear a single stage within 2 to 3 minutes. It kinda feels like that 1 to 6 stages within an area are chopped into different sections instead. Kinda a bit of a letdown. There are some places within stages that's impossible to go through without specific characters to get, which is a bit of a letdown since I gotta have to do that gacha roll instead just to get them at a cost of elemental medals. Now this design should be alright on their other previous Mega Man titles, just not this one for the mobile version, where getting characters has a price. Though there are some characters that would let me across without having to roll, but then again, I'd have to research them at the lab that takes a long time to unlock and finish. While there are some stages that can be annoying at times, since the camera follows the character with a bit of delay, you wouldn't know at times what to expect when going down. The same problem with the other Mega Man games as before, as well as when you skip enemies at some certain stages that would soon later on trigger a in battle, which is part you gotta clear every enemy on sight before proceeding. The enemies that you skip a while ago won't despawn. That makes the enemy able to shoot you from afar while you can't even go near or even see the enemy. Now that can be really annoying at times. The playable characters within the game are based out from the previous Mega Man games before, stemming from every parts of the franchise, from Mega Man, Mega Man X, etc. Their 3D character versions from those series looks quite impressive. They definitely got it accurate. Even the strengths from their abilities looks really good. Even the bosses on how they look and move were spot on. It has a few changes here and there, but it's all good. I wish these guys could be here already. The difference of each character besides their obvious looks is their own unique abilities. Each of their own abilities does have a different mechanics from the other, giving more options that the player might be fond of using. Each of their own abilities has some minor modifications depending on what you choose, not solely just changing the stats, but also how the way it works. But then again, you do gotta have to rank them up in a way that you need more memories of them. These memories can be acquired through capsule rolls if you already got the character already, while some characters can be acquired within the story mode. In other words, you need duplicates of the character in order to get the character patch. It's the same way how weapons can also be ranked up after you attain them from capsule rolls or events. Now the weapons on the other hand have different types that can change the player's playstyle. Either the player wants to go for melee weapons, sprays, machine gun, busters, etc. I like how I could see the weapon's stats properly about it, instead of imaginary bars or such without numbers. Though I kinda wish that these ones should have been in percentages, while the ROF part, or the rate of fire, is set as seconds instead. You can also add chips towards the weapons for further improvements. Not only they do increase the weapon's base attack, HP and defense, but also add a few unique mechanics that amplifies the weapon's capabilities. And these chips represents the bosses you encounter them along the way. That also has their own set of stats that further amplifies the weapon as a whole. If you want to increase your character's defense, you might want to get some good armor parts within co-op missions. The higher the difficulty you go, the better the armor parts you get. You can also collect these bolts to create specific armor parts that you might want to have, which is really convenient. I don't have to waste much of my time trying to repeat the same stages all over again just to get some good quality armor parts. As well as leveling up the armor slots. Yeah, you heard me right. Leveling up the armor slots instead of the armor parts itself is a thing here in the game. Which is a good thing it doesn't upgrade the armor parts itself, since that would end up being a hustle for grinding again. Now when it comes to grinding, Rockman X DiVE is pretty much moderate when it comes to it. Sure, you can still play the game without even much of a role through upgrading weapons, armor, chips, or even skills. But then again, you'll be having a hard time on a PvP or player versus player match if you don't got a strong character or weapons with you. You'll pretty much see the huge difference of it once you've played a couple of PvP matches later on. As well as if you don't even grind that much on the game, you're hardly gonna make any progress within the game itself. It's not the same as the other type of gacha games out there, where you can easily save enough to roll on your favorite characters by just doing those daily logins alone. To be fair though, the amount of daily grind that you have to do is just around 10 to 15 minutes. As in, you just gotta do the whole daily quest thing. It's not as grindy of how people might think of, as well as daily logins alone isn't gonna be that helpful for the player. As I end up progressing through the game, from time to time, I kinda end up getting stuck in some stages. It's not because of how I play the game, it's because my level was too low that it ends up becoming a huge disadvantage. Leveling is a huge part of the game to make progress, since upgrading weapons, armors, and chips can be leveled up on the same level as the player is. But then again, leveling up is pretty much easy. By just doing daily quests alone gives you a ton of XP to level up every day to a certain point, and spending most of your AP or action points through spamming the skip button on stages till your AP is depleted. And you can also do that event XP thing that could boost your experience really high. To give you a clear perspective on the leveling part, I started out playing the game at May 14, 2020. From that day until the day where I started to roll during the DiVE Festival at June 11, 2020, that's about 28 days I think. I ended up getting from level 1 to level 56 during those times. That's quite fast, to be honest. As I stated before, Mega Man franchise started out from console to console. Having a game made on the phone, on the other hand, is a huge gamble for the developers. One of which, that would end up being a problem, is the controls part. Now, a lot of people did state their opinions of using controller that it is a must. On the other hand, on my opinion, touchscreen controls can still be used to play the game. Yeah, you might end up experiencing some bit of problems here and there. Even I end up messing from time to time due to my sweaty hands over time. It's a bit exaggerated that controller is a must. The game is still playable though. It's rather harder without a controller to play the game. Just like any Mega Man game I could think of. I end up using the PS4 controller for serious times, like in PvPs, or any stages that's below the recommended power that I currently have. One of the main features that the game has to offer is the implementation of the player versus player matches and co-op missions. This what makes the game unique compared to the other Mega Man franchise that they made. Completing stages along with a friend or with some random people online makes the game more interactive within the community to play along. A more social approach that they made for the game, which is nice. There are still a lot of bugs during the co-op missions though. That frequently happens when you're having internet or graphical problems at times, as the developer stated. Though some of the bugs that do happen, I'm quite sure that the devs said isn't the case. Player versus player or PvP matches does pave way for players who are looking for the game as a more competitive aspect. Players who participate in PvP matches do get rewards on both sides, but of course, the higher one goes to the winner of the match, of course. It also has practice mode if you don't want to play that seriously, and still get some rewards out of it, which is great for those having internet issues. As much as how PvP matches sounds fun, it still has a lot of problems though. You could say that PvP matches has its own cons and pros for those when it comes to the internet issues. Even if you got a good connection, it's not a total advantage for your side, since players who experience slow internet connection within the game still follows up on how their side damages its opponent, despite on how the opponent's perspective having never touched the player. I'm not sure why the devs did it this way, but it's just how it is. I thought that having a good internet connection would be a huge advantage when our internet service provider offered us with a better internet plan using fiber connections. In the end, I still got stuck on the same rank. Oh, and one thing you might have noticed is that how my win rate is really low is that I intentionally lose towards my opponent on a rank match just to get that sweet 100 PvP match rewards on an event. Yes, cause I feel lazy at times when grinding on the game. I just work my way out from the lower ranks later on when I was sure to get that 100 PvP match rewards already. Aside all that, as expected for an online game, cheaters seem to be everywhere nowadays, especially in PvP ranking matches or even ranking events. Good thing the developers is actively removing these cheaters. They even actively shame them on their Facebook page, which is a relief to see from time to time. Since the game is still at its early stages, there are still several bugs that they need to fix. Some of them ends up being a real game breaker, as in you get soft lock or stuck on a certain stage. This happens rarely in my case. And no, I'm quite sure there are no graphical problems or even net problems I might have encountered during my co-op or versus matches. I mean, I can run the game at full settings without even a problem, while I have a ping rating at most around 50 to 60 all the time nowadays, just when I upgraded our internet fiber plan. Though despite the bugs, what I really like is how the game supports an easy way to report the bugs or any problems, unlike how a lot of mobile games misses this out. The developers really are fast when it comes to tackling with the players' concerns. Although there are times that they do end up misunderstanding what I end up reporting about, that kind of frustrates me though, to the point I tried contacting them through Facebook instead. Surprisingly, they did end up replying less than 12 hours with an apology and reassurance that they did end up reporting about this matter to their development team, which is a huge plus for me to them, seeing how they really value the players even in mobile games. It's what I'd expect from a Mega Man series, aside from the borrowed background music and sound effects from the other Mega Man series, which is actually great that they did add it. The originally made for Rockman X DiVE is quite alright. The story on the other hand isn't that remarkable, to be honest, as it heavily relies on the player's nostalgic factor, to the point that it even ends up recreating the events from the other Mega Man series in the past, which it's not bad for the fans, but it isn't that friendly towards the newer players. Aside that, the story isn't that engaging. I did really hope that the story was good. Kinda like the same way how Mega Man X4's story of how Reploids claimed their independence with military force. The game's mascot named Rico is actually a decent character within the story, acting the same way as how Alia and Iris role as a navigator in the past, guiding the player and describing the bosses that you will be encountering within the story. Rockman X DiVE has some ups and downs along the way. As a mobile game though, I could see it work out pretty much alright. Not only is the game decent of its gameplay, and without those annoying ads around, but also it doesn't rely on such shady mobile game tactics of a pay-to-win scenario, giving out a fair play for the players. Except on the PvP side, sadly. You still gotta rely on those better characters and weapons just to climb up on the higher ranks. The game frequently updates and really listens to the players' opinions and problems within the game. They even manage to hit that good old nostalgic factor for the fans with respect. Bugs do still occasionally happen, either something small that doesn't seem to be much of a bother, or in most cases, ends up being a game breaker, or you'll end up soft locking or stuck in some certain areas. I really like the stages, music, and bosses they chose for the game that are one of the good ones within the Mega Man franchise. Would I play the game any further? Yes, of course. The game is still pretty fun despite the problems that they'll be patching it out sooner or later. And it's not like there's a lot of decent platforming games out there nowadays, comparatively speaking to the amount of different genre games out there. Would I recommend you on the game? If you're looking for these type of platforming games or even a fan of the Mega Man franchise, then yes, I do highly recommend you to try it out and check out the game for yourself. Even without a controller, it's still playable. They even managed to step it up with the customization for the touch controls, which is actually great. I'd rate this game a 7.5 out of 10. Despite how they managed to recreate a beautifully combined game from every part of the franchise through a mobile game, it has a lot of drawbacks that messed up the game itself, but at least it's still a decent game to play. Sure, they've done great with the designs of the characters, stages, and even the gameplay platformy side. Even the added feature of co-op missions and PvP matches was a plus. But the amount of bugs, little value microtransactions for gacha rolls, and the tons of problems with the PvP matches is disappointing within the game. As a mobile game that is still new, it still has a lot of potential on what they're going for. At the very least, the solo plays for the game isn't that bad, even though how the game kinda relies on a pay-to-win basis for competitive matches. Playing the game without the PvP is still all good. Besides, it's really interesting to have a huge cast of characters in the game, and the amount of stages they've applied. It's just, yeah, the gacha system is a luck-based game. They should have at least give different ways for the players to gain other rank S characters or weapons, not only through researches. Kinda like how other gacha games that are very generous about it. Hey there, what do you think about the review I made? This is my first review video I've made on YouTube, and I'm really wondering if I did alright on this one. This kinda took me like 2 to 3 weeks to settle, with the whole planning, making a script, recording of the game, etc. Took me longer than I should have, honestly. Oh, and by the way, to those who are a fan of the Mega Man franchise, or at least the ones who've known or played the other previous games before, I just wanna ask, who do you think would be a nice addition for the Rockman X DiVE character to be in? I already have my own personal picks for that. I'm sure some of you would agree on these guys to be in there. I also plan on reviewing some other games out there, like these ones later on my channel. I kinda been wanting to focus on the older game titles that were left out or forgotten by many. I want to give the games I wanted to review on some respect it deserves. But of course, perhaps I'll be doing some newer game ones too. I also plan on reviewing some other anime titles that deserves to be highlighted. Be sure to check it out on my channel later on if you want to, through subscribing to my channel. If you want to though. It kinda really helps me, to be honest. Builds up that confidence that people watch the things I make from time to time. Please do comment or ask me anything down on the video below. Tell me if I'm doing bad or alright. And if you really like the video, a thumbs up would be nice, or at least share it around online. I may not be the best, but I try to give my own honest opinions of what I review of a game and share my experience with it. So yeah, thanks for watching guys.